So I think that a lot of people in power have silenced a lot of rational people who say exactly what you just said, so that there's this false consensus, this pretend consensus among the professionals that this is what we should do, because so many people have been canceled or silenced, or they're even self-silencing. Most people, honestly, are more self-silencing because they don't want the riffraff when it comes to this topic, because it's just so, it's explosive.
Pam, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up? So happy to be here.
Yeah, pumped to chat with you. Finally glad we're locking this in and having a conversation. So my first and most important question, very serious. How are you doing? Like actually, like for real, how are you doing? Not enough sort of a bullshit, hey, how are you kind of way, but like really.
Honestly, for real, I'm doing pretty good. This time last year, I was doing terribly,
Oh,
and I really reflect on that. So, I don't know if you know this. I didn't really post about this on my social media because it was just so miserable. But I had this knee surgery that went terribly wrong, and I got really depressed because I've
right.
been through already this health issue in the past, another disability, and this was just supposed to be a little meniscus repair, no big deal. And then I was pretty much on crutches or in a wheelchair for 6 months, 8 months, and couldn't do things for a good year. And I like to do active things. I like to hike. I like to bike. I like to run. I still can't run yet, but I was feeling pretty hopeless this time last year. I was in a lot of pain, and I already have other chronic pain. So anyway, the point is I'm doing really well now. I'm doing better, and I'm just grateful.
Hello, my friend. Before we jump straight into the episode, I would love to share the sponsors of this podcast. And the sponsors of this podcast are all the businesses that I've created that are really part of the ecosystem that run this whole thing. And at the top of that list is Patreon. Patreon is the home of our exclusive community where we do bonus episodes, live streams, Q&As, and merch discounts, and so much more. Patreon is the number one way to support this podcast and to support my mental health nonprofit called You Are Loved. Next, we have my clothing brand called Shop for Everybody. Every hat and every t-shirt you see me wear on every single episode of this podcast is from Shop for Everybody. It's the home of For the Dads, For the Moms, all Something for Everybody merch, and it's the home of all You Are Loved merch. So that's shopforeverybody.com. And the last thing is my sports performance brand called Champions Adjust. Again, if you see anything Champions Adjust related, it's all found at champsadjust.com. It also has its own podcast. We also do a sports show through Champions Adjust. And if you're looking for any mindset or mental skills classes, they can all be found at champsadjust.com. And so if you want to stay up to date on everything that we're doing here with all of the businesses that I'm involved in, please go to aaronmashbitz.com and sign up for our weekly newsletter. Thank you. Now, on to the episode, completely uninterrupted and ad-free. Here we go. Yeah, I was going to ask you why, because when you said it, you were like kind of surprised to hear yourself say that you were doing well.
Yeah, I'm happy.
So that's beautiful. Is the knee okay? Like, what's your physical sort of status now?
So I can't run yet. I'm hoping I will be able to. I'm not giving up. But I'm able now to go to spin classes, which
Yeah.
I could not do last year. I mean, I couldn't even get in and out of a car without pain last year at this time. But I can walk long distances. I can go on hikes, and I feel like there's just more promise to come. So originally, I hurt myself in a ski accident like 20 years ago,
Oh,
and had an ACL surgery, and then another surgery because of scar tissue, and then a couple years ago, I tore my meniscus, and it was supposed to be some, minor little scope and no big deal. I've been through these other really major surgeries in my brachial plexus. It's by my shoulder. Anyway, that was a whole thing. So I figured the knee, no big deal. Everybody understands the knee. That's not going to be a problem. And then that ended up being a disaster. But yeah, so now I'm good. I'm just grateful I can walk. You get to the point where you get greedy, or I think I got greedy. I was like, I want to be able to run. I want to be able to do triathlons again. I used to be very active. I used to be into martial arts. I used to do kickboxing and karate, all this stuff. I mean, I'm a little older now, so I'm not doing that, but that's just my personality, that I love doing those things. So I really hope I can, at the very least, run. My goal is this year, 2026, is to complete a 5K running. And I'm excited, and I'm not giving up.
Fuck yeah. You're gonna do it. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I think about, like, at some point in my life, maybe I'll get, like, injured and I won't be able to do active stuff that I do, and, like, kinda like your situation, I'm like, that already makes me fucking,
It's
miserable. I'm like, I don't
it's
know what
very
to
bad.
do, and so I can't even imagine people who can't have the ability to move and actively choose not to. That is, like, something that I, like, don't understand, and I talk about it all the time. I know there's some limitations in this and that, and you know, what you believe about yourself and all these types of things, but it's like, it's almost like if you don't move, you're actively taking a pill that says, "Be depressed on it."
Yeah, I always have that trouble. I don't understand, and even people close to me in my life or my family, they don't like to exercise. And for me, the one source of happiness and gratitude is when I'm out moving and I'm in the world. I'm just doing even very basic things because I've honestly been through a pretty severe disability. That's how I've landed here. That's how I've landed in this public role because I had nothing to lose. I was disabled. I don't know if you know that background story about me. So my perspective on things is, I think, different than the average person coming from a life where I was very, very active. I did triathlons. That's even how I met my husband. I was a black belt in karate. I did kickboxing with MMA fighters. I was doing it all. And I came down with this rare condition called thoracic outlet syndrome. And I was completely laid up and I couldn't function. I couldn't use my hands. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't go out to a restaurant without pain. My life completely came to a screeching halt. So once I got better from that, from seeing very specialized doctors and finally getting the right diagnosis and being in a healthcare system that's not socialized so that I could see these really specialized doctors, then I mean, I have so much gratitude. So when the littlest thing, I'm always like, I'm just happy I'm here and I'm out in the world, and when people are completely fine and they're just sitting there on Twitter or on social media, just laying around when they're completely healthy and capable of doing things, to me, yeah, it completely, I don't understand why they would waste their healthiness.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so precious. There's this quote that I always come back to that I feel like almost, summarizes our entire society today, and it says, "It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society."
Hmm.
So we find it strange and odd that someone will wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning to go work out, but it's cool that they sit for 12 hours a day, eat at night, and drink all day and do all these things because they're well adjusted to our society that is very, very sick. Where being obese is fine, and you can have fucking 2 seats on the airplane, and we don't care, and we can give you all these obesity medications because you need the easy fix instead of doing the hard thing. Now, I think there's medications or can be a time and place for those types of things. Like if you're 800 pounds and you're about to die, sure, let's do something about it. But you're like 60 pounds overweight, like you're right there. It might take you 2 years, but you're so adjusted to our very sick society that you're going to try and take the easy way out. And I just find that to be ridiculous. One, and so when people do abnormal things like eat well, move well, sleep well, and think well, they're like, dude, what the fuck is going on? Or you go to a bar with your friends and you say, I'm not drinking tonight. They look at you like you're a fucking insane human. Like, oh, this fucking guy had an addiction. That's the only reason why he's not drinking. We can't be around him. No, he's like, I don't want to drink alcohol because I know it's shit for me. Like they're like, so it's all these things are so strange and how kind of backwards our society is. And then not just me being on a soapbox, but like, whatever.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like,
I like that. Yeah, I mean, I used to wake up at 5 in the morning and jump in the swimming pool at 5:30 a.m. and swim a couple miles every other day, and
yeah,
that was normal for me.
yeah,
And I couldn't do that anymore, and I did have to lay around for a long time, and I honestly didn't get depressed because I would just do anything just to keep myself busy, or just to find little things to be grateful for. When I was able to walk, I was walking my dog, and I was actually walking the neighbor's dog, and they pay me $20 a day to walk their dog. And I went from being a total, this like prestigious UCSF job to walking my neighbor's job, and I was still just grateful. And so if you could do it, if you can do more than that, please, like, remember that. don't sell yourself short. That's really something we should all remember.
Yeah. Yeah, we only have this one life, this one body. Might as well
Hmm.
try and do the best we can. So you had this disability, and then that led to you sort of speaking out about things that you saw or didn't see or wanted to, like, you weren't in the public eye before that, or what's that story there?
Yeah, I was not in the public eye at all. In fact, I was really shy about public speaking. I was nervous the first couple of podcasts I had done. And what happened was, actually, I was living in California. I went through that big disability. I got back to work part-time. I couldn't really work a regular job, so I'd already kinda lost my career. But I was so grateful, back to work, and this was in 2021, and this is during the COVID era, and they forced the COVID vaccine on me, and I declined it. And when I did that, I decided at this point I have absolutely nothing to lose. And when I was at this new job, that's when I saw all the craziness in the social work profession and the mental health profession. I was working at this clinic with teenagers. It was adults and teenagers. I was a per diem working in both tracks. But the teenagers were the most notable, where half the girls were identifying as trans, and none of my colleagues were saying a thing. In fact, they were affirming it. They were demonizing the parents who had questions about it. And I felt like I was in the twilight zone. You know, had been out with this physical condition, so I didn't realize how crazy things had become. And so when they imposed the vaccine on me, I left. I was basically fired by the state, and decided I had absolutely nothing to lose. And I started making silly, some not so silly Instagram reels calling out the lunacy of the mental health profession, and I kinda got noticed by some people in the public eye, and that's how I landed here to be known as the Truthful Therapist.
Mm. Yeah, that's how I've definitely certainly found you, was on Instagram. Yeah, so
When did you
it's
find me? Was it because 'cause I've slowed down on some of those reels, but I used to be really into it. I used to just come up with all kinds of creative things.
yeah, very creative. I don't know when I started following you, maybe a year ago, 6 months? I'm not really sure.
Oh, I've already slowed down by then. You gotta go back and some
I
of my
gotta
older
gotta go
stuff,
back in your
yeah.
history.
Mhm. When I dressed
Uh,
up in costumes and I played the truth teacher. Did you see that one? I don't know.
uh-uh.
I've done a bunch of silly things.
Well, your Instagram got pretty big, so I'm sure you had some of your videos go viral, which were
I
probably some of
did,
those
yeah.
ones. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now we're here in 2026. What is sort of the, I don't know, your overarching sort of state of the union about where mental health is? Are we on the upswing in terms of the trans ideology? Are we in a downswing? Are we sort of in a lull? What's sort of
Hmm.
happening?
I think it's both and. Within the mental health field, in those circles, it is full steam ahead. They are doubling down. They are insane about it. The institutions are not stopping. However, I think in our culture at large, I think there has been a shift. I think a lot of normal people are figuring out that the experts don't know what they're talking about. In fact, that many of them have done harm, especially on children. I think the sports issue has raised awareness, because that's something that touches so many people, and it's just so common sense that boys shouldn't be in girls' sports and they're not the same. And the more the radicals insist that they are, the more people realize that they can't trust what these institutions and the media is telling them. So I think it's both. It depends on which circles you're in, and whether or not things are changing. Of course, there are a lot of things that have progressed. Just was it 2 weeks ago now? There was a detransitioner lawsuit where a girl in New York won $2 million against her doctor and a psychologist, I believe, uh, for malpractice. And it wasn't just simply because they did the trans thing on her when she was a minor. It was they, I think, ruled it because there was some shenanigans, or they didn't do it properly according to the case. However, it really sets a precedent for future detransitioner lawsuits. There are about 30 of them right now in the pipeline, and I believe there'll be many more. Um, so that's new, and two governing bodies have made statements that perhaps they're gonna backtrack on transitioning minors, that, there isn't they said something like, there wasn't enough evidence. Yeah, no shit. There's no evidence. We know this, but they just keep doubling down, and suddenly they've just changed their tune, I think, because of this lawsuit. So that's a new development. But there have been I've been fighting this with a cohort of people for 4 or 5 years, and certainly things have been changing slowly behind the scenes. Or it's not really behind the scenes, but if you're not watching it closely, you don't realize. Like the WPATH files came out. A lot of states came up with these, these gender bans, and we had been going around testifying to stop surgeries and hormones on minors. There are different laws within different states, but the fact that that's even come about, that's only within the last few years. So there definitely have been some changes for the positive. Of course, President Trump put out several executive orders when he came on the scene, and I've been watching a couple of people who that woke them up, that they realized, oh, at first they hated Trump, and then they realized actually Trump was right about this, that maybe we shouldn't be doing surgery on minors. I honestly don't think we should be doing this surgery on anyone, but at the very least, doing it on minors, it's a starter point for people who haven't really put a lot of thought into how bad the whole thing really is. So
Mm. Yeah. I always wonder about the sort of the genesis of all of this, like why? Because if I take a common sense look at it, I'm like, obviously we shouldn't be like transitioning kids into the different sex. Like that's fucking insane behavior. They're children. I wanted to be fucking Batman when I was 11. Because
yeah,
I think there's a stark difference between encouraging children to have fantasy and imagination and play and explore things. I think that's a beautiful part of a childhood. My son is 4 months old. And if he tells me that he wants to be a 4 months old, I don't know if I said 4 years old, 4 months old. So all he says is me, which is a
he's not
basic.
talking yet,
But like when
not
he's
with
4 years
words.
old and we've watched like some cartoons or we watched WWE and he's like, Dad, I want to be a superhero. I'm like, fucking right, you do, bro. Let's go to the backyard. Let's fucking play, you know? But then there's going to be a difference between we're playing pretend, that's made up. And now we're going to be a real person in the real world doing real shit. And you have a penis. So you're a man and you're a boy and you do that type of stuff. And like, but he can explore different, like, I think there's a difference. Like, I think in our culture is like so much has to be one or the other, black or white. Like what about like kids live in the middle with all these different types of things? Like what if he has a sister? My wife and I have another kid, God willing, and she's a female, and he wants to like he puts on her shoes one time. Is he a fucking homo? Should I make him be a fucking girl? No, no, come on, that's ridiculous. He's just like playing with his sister. Maybe she wants to paint his nails because they're doing like a little teacup gimmick. Like these things are gonna happen. These are normal. But why we have to think so much into it now? Is he a girl? Should we give him a fucking like? What is that like? So when I think about it like that, I'm like, I just don't get it. And so is it money driven? Is it culture driven? Do people want more power? Like why?
I
If
think
you have
there's
an
a
answer for that.
lot. I mean, we could go on and on. Money, of course, is a motivator. So I think that a lot of people in power have silenced a lot of rational people who say exactly what you just said, so that there's this false consensus, this pretend consensus among the professionals that this is what we should do, because so many people have been canceled or silenced, or they're even self-silencing. Most people, honestly, are more self-silencing because they don't want the riffraff when it comes to this topic, because it's just so it's explosive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, you're coming from a worldview that is based in reality, based in truth. But if you're a true radical leftist, you don't think that way. The whole purpose of queer theory, which is really what's behind all of this, is about creating a subjective truth. And it's about upending everything that's normal into something that's abnormal. So they are not going to think about what you just said, the rational thing. If they want to be Batman, that's just pretend, and they're not really going to jump off a building with their bat suit. That's not real. But they can pretend. In fact, I'm from San Francisco. They did a whole bat thing for this boy who had cancer. I'm just remembering that, and it was such a sweet thing. But I don't think he really thought he was Batman ever. And that was during a time where we weren't doing that. We weren't pretending. Uh, so part of it is just comes from a different mindset. I think there's a lot of personality disorder problems wrapped into this. People who are focused on external locus of control versus internal. And so they need this to pit themselves against the world. You know, there's that us versus them, the oppressor versus oppressed uh, narrative that this people who are attracted to this tend to fall into, including parents who trans their kids. They get a lot of attention. There's a lot of social capital around this. And I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of emptiness in our culture that is driving these needs for them to get this external validation, or, you know, needing people to respect these pronouns, or needing to tell everybody to coerce to this ideology, otherwise they'll crumble inside, they're gonna kill themselves. So there's I don't know, there's so many things, and of course, you know, there's a history. There's this, Robert Money, he did this experiment with these twins. Have you heard of this? The Reamer
Mm-mm.
twins?
I've heard of it, but please share.
Um, they were on Oprah, if you can Google that. There was this twin who had his botched circumcision, and I guess his penis got burnt off, and so this sick academic money, he decided that he was going to experiment on this twin and say that, you know, it's all subjective, or we can just boys and girls are interchangeable as long as we socialize them differently. So this was supposed to be the experiment to demonstrate that we're just going to raise this little boy as a little girl. They're going to do surgeries on him, and, you know, then it'll show that gender is sort of socially engineered. Well, it turned out he had all kinds of mental health issues, and eventually, I think it was the parents that told him the truth, that he was always a boy, and he didn't go to his original name, but he went to a boy name. But it ended in tragedy. I believe it ended in suicide. But regardless, this money guy still became this name for gender ideology. He's sort of the father of it, and even though his experiment was completely failed and this boy killed himself, he somehow got the reputation that this is a proof that we can change gender versus sex. You know, he basically came up with this concept of gender. So yeah, it's a lot of perverted, sick stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah. The only the only reason I started to care about this subject was because of the sports angle.
Mm,
And I also come from like a professional wrestling WWE background. And so the two ways I view it is like totally different from like competitive real sports and like pretend WWE sports.
mm.
And so I
It's
think
like a
also
show.
right, so, like, you can be as inclusive as possible in a WWE show. I can wrestle a female, it doesn't matter, it's all pretend, we're just doing part of the show, and so I think people, like, I don't know, conflate that idea with actual real competitive sports where there's, like, people's lives at stake. The boxer came out that that was actually a dude, beating up
Right.
women, and, like, people are still trying to sort of rationalize it, "That's
A
fine,"
shocker, right? That was
it's
a
like it's
man. Oh my gosh, I'm shocked.
yeah, it's like, you like have this idea that you wanna stand up for women and, like, women's empowerment and all this is like, but it's okay if, like, some dude comes in there, claims to be a woman, and just starts punching people in the fucking face. Like,
Yeah.
it's like everything is so ass backwards. Um, but
I mean,
yeah,
it comes also, in terms of, like, how are people fooled, I think is kind of also what you're asking. But, I mean, people believe that there is something, some rare, and I embarrassed to admit that I believe this too, that maybe there was something about somebody innately. I can't even tell you what. I never really believed in the whole, like, gendered soul or something, but that there was something about them internally that made them feel mismatched from their body in a very pervasive way that could not be fixed through therapy. You know, it would be very difficult. It's very deep rooted, I'll say. I used to believe that, and I still believe that there's something there for people. I just don't really believe it's innate anymore. And but I think many people do believe that it is innate, and that we need to do this, otherwise they really can't survive, they really can't function. And of course, we know that these surgeries and these hormones are really, really radical. They're really just barbaric. And until you really actually look into it more closely, if you were ever to Google, like, what's a phalloplasty, which is the surgery to create a fake penis, just the images alone, it's so shocking. It's so gruesome. How they graft skin and then they surgically. It's really horrible. That, and I think if people really knew what it was about, they would recognize that they were not promoting kindness. Even if there was some magical gender soul, we shouldn't be performing these surgeries on human bodies because it's just barbaric. But because people believe in that, it's hard to shake this sort of religion. It's really like a religion. And when you try to challenge that, you really hit an impasse with many people.
Mm, yeah. Well, because it's easy to understand, especially for young people, why they would get trapped up in this. Because as a young person, it's hard to be a young person.
Mhm.
I could take experience of as a boy, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 4. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I got a lot of different things happening. I'm figuring out if my penis is it get hard because I got to go pee like it used to be, or it's because I'm like attracted to something. Am I stumbling upon porn? Do I like chicks? Like, why do I see all these dudes in the locker room that I'm changing with? Why is my body not like their body? Like, why are they so more developed than me? This guy has some facial hair. Why don't I have facial hair? It's like all these. Why am I not part of this cool group? Like all these things are happening. All this is normal for people. I got friends who ask me all the time about their kids who are a little older who get bullied. I'm like, boys get bullied. It's just like I don't want to say it's a bad part of the experience, but it is part of the experience. Now, I think is there sort of levels to bullying? Yes, of course, but there is always going to be something that we riz each other up with. That's part of the deal, and to sort of try and remove that to
Mhm.
make things more nice only makes things more worse because then the people are really on the outside. Then they want to really feel like they need a sense of belonging. And then that sense of belonging creates them to really do anything to be part of a group. And I think that's where this comes from. And because, like, when I was growing up, it was like you were a goth or a jock or you were into this or that or theater. And so those sort of groups were your in group and you felt like you belonged there. Now the groups I feel like are much more extreme. If you want to be part of our group, you got to identify as trans. And like, okay, well, I'm going to do it because I have no friends. I have no friends, nobody to hang out with. So of course I'm going to say it. And then I'm just going to go along with it and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And then the adults in my life also affirm that behavior. Now I'm totally fucked.
Yeah.
Uh, you
That's
know,
the part that I had trouble or I was shocked at in back in 2021. Now I'm aware that this is what's going on, but it was shocking at that time to watch the adults who I thought were supposed to be the ones that were supposed to help kids figure things out were the ones that were actually guiding them off the cliff.
mhm, yeah. Yeah, they should know better.
They should know better.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
so
should.
empathy has been weaponized. And this is all sort of couched as an empathy thing, be kind, accept someone for their true self. And of course we know that the kids that are attracted to this are the more vulnerable kids. They're not the well-adjusted kids that are the star football player. They're the kids that are on the side, that are awkward. We know autism is a big factor. Kids who are autistic gravitate towards this because they struggle socially. There's several traits of autism that would lead someone to believe that they could be trapped in the wrong body or just be struggling with their development, and this is an attractive way to maybe opt out of that or believe that they're opting out. No one can opt out of growing up, but that's the I think the fantasy or the hope. That's what this becomes, a lot of failure to launch situations. But yeah, it's exploiting all of those feelings you also mentioned earlier about what am I? What's a boy? What's happening with my body? Like, why aren't I like this dude? Why am I, why aren't I masculine enough? Well, I'm scared. I can't be tough like that person, or I don't understand what's going on. Porn has screwed me up and I'm completely scared of my own sexuality. And so and when you take the estrogens, a lot of young men do this. They take the estrogen and it suppresses their urges, their sexual urges, because it does that, but that's one of the reasons they enjoy it because they're so uncomfortable with that. That that better than me. I can't speak for it personally, but what happens during that time, and it's a lot of fear. So being trans is a good way to hide behind that fear. Also, just a lot of boys who don't know how to talk to girls. Like all the girls they're socialized to be nice to the trans kid, be nice to the awkward kid, and now these boys who could never talk to a girl ever have all these girls who are really honestly faking it, but they're being nice to him because it gives them social capital to be nice to this trans kid. It's really bad for everyone involved, not just the people who are identifying as trans, but all the kids around.
Yeah. I think we have to be more honest with kids when they're growing up that it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Like, that's part of the deal of, like, trying to grow into the person that we know you can become. Because again, life is hard. You just talked about some of the shit that you went through. You don't
Mm.
build that sort of resilience or capability to overcome challenges if everything you're told in life is supposed to be easy and seamless and normal and fine. It's like, no, it's hard. You have weird feelings in your body. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and you're like, fuck, I hate that. This sucks. What is this? What is happening? Like, I don't can't speak for young girls, but I imagine they go through the exact same thing. And then you
Yeah, it's
look
a
on
different
social,
fear.
it's different. Yeah, it's different.
But it's, of the same vein. Yeah.
And so we have to be honest with them. Like, it's gonna be hard, you know? Like, and you're gonna have friends that don't go well, and you're gonna get heartbroken, and you're gonna get rejected from a friend group, and you might eat lunch by yourself a couple times, and like, I don't know, these things are gonna happen. Someone's gonna make fun of you for the shoes that you wore when you got them yesterday because your mom bought them for you. They're not very cool, but you have to wear them because they're the only shoes that she bought for you. But your friends think they're fucking stupid. Like, these things are gonna happen. Like, it's just like, I'm gonna try to express that to my son as much as possible. And it's so funny because, like, I've got pretty long ears, but I actually got plastic surgery on them, so they're pinned back. But they
Oh.
used to stick straight forward like my eyes. It's horrible. So I used to be called Dumbo a lot.
Mm.
And my son has massive ears right now. And he's got
Aw.
this little head. And so I know that when he, like, grows up a little bit, he's going to get made fun of that. And, like, that's part of him growing up. And I want to be able to talk to him about it and how he responds to it and how he addresses the bully and what he does with it. And that's all part of him growing up, because not every person he meets is not going to be, like, really nice and kind to him all the time. Be like, oh, Asher, what can we do for you, bro? It's like, nah, you got to earn shit. He's going to be in jujitsu. Maybe he's got to beat someone up or something. Maybe he's got to defend himself, right? Like, all of these things about you're building your capacity to handle things. That's how we teach young kids. That's why sports are important, or martial arts, or things of that nature. But we can't give them this message that life is supposed to be easy and everything is going to be fine. If one thing happens, well, we got to fix it. We got to put you in this bubble. We got to change schools. Everything around you has to change. No, I need to change. I need to grow. And I think that's a more of an important message. At least I think.
Yeah, I was a school counselor over a period of time between, like, 2005 and 2015, and in California, and I watched there was a real shift around 2015 where suddenly the kids really just didn't have any resilience anymore. The littlest thing, like if a peer rejected them, or they went through a breakup, or if they didn't get a grade they expected, they had a complete meltdown. And I'm not talking about kids with disabilities, I'm not talking about kids that have some kind of, you know, real, like, innate problem. I'm talking about just normal kids that they should just be able to say, like, that didn't go my way, and I'm gonna try harder next time, or I'm gonna deal with this. They had a complete meltdown. They were suicidal. There was so much suicide, and this is before people just said I was suicidal all the time. It was for real. They really felt that way, and it was because they were protected from the adults to feel, like, any negative feelings, and that has been a problem, I think, in our culture.
Yeah, largely. You could see it. You can see it play out in with adults now.
Mhm.
I mean, I can see it play out in college sports with all this NIL stuff, where if one thing doesn't go your way, you just change schools because everything's supposed to go your way all the time. It's very, very strange. It's just not how my parents raised me, you know?
Yeah, same.
Um,
And I always prided myself as being tough and, wanting to push through things. That's why I think you and I are similar that way. That's why we're attracted to sports. That's what I like about sports. I've always liked endurance type sports. I like running. I like pushing through pain and bringing myself. I didn't even win. I wasn't even that good in terms of a competitive level, but I was competed with myself, and I would get better, and just always would, finish the race even if I fell off my bike. That actually happened once, things like that. So I just really enjoyed that aspect of sports.
yeah, it's it changed my life. There's a couple things for me that really changed my life. One was, like, being born to the parents that I have. They're the best parents of all time. Number one, changed my life. Number two was getting in the gym. And then three was sports. And nowadays, youth sports have been taken over by money. It's $1 billion business. So most kids are quitting sports by the age of 13, which is
Mm.
terrible. Like, though we've made sports only about winning, about getting a trophy, about getting ranked, when really it's not, because majority of people who play sports are not going to be professional athletes and make $1 million. It's just not going to happen. But man, what can you learn from being part of a group from not getting the spot on the team, but then trying again and then getting the spot on the team, from building relationships and friends and having a group to hang out with and being able to have you're 8 years old, you got a buddy on the team and you're like, Ma, I want to hang out with fucking Jim. Okay, she calls, you hang out, you got friends, right? It's like all of these innate things that you can learn from playing sports, but in our society, we always make things about having the outcome and the result instead of actually the process of just doing the thing of playing the sport. And then maybe by you're 11 or 12, you don't like the thing anymore. That's totally fine. You want to move on to something else. But at least you were part of a group and you learn stuff. You learn how to be a teammate and reciprocate and have a coach that you could look up to as a young man. Having a male role model is wickedly important. And all of these things help society. Or maybe you're part of a religious group or like a Boy Scout community or something, right? But then we have these kids that feel like they're on the outside looking in. And that's where sort of it gets really sad and dark. And they're willing to do kind of anything. And I would do the same thing to be part of a group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it is kind of sad, and it's being reinforced by either nefarious or very misguided adults.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then also the other piece you asked me earlier about the agenda or why this is going on. Unfortunately, and I don't think people realize this, a lot of it is about just creating kids, creating victims. I mean, it makes them more open to predators. So if kids are learn to not believe their lying eyes, then predators have a much wider pathway to come in and, fool kids and tell them, I can trust you, keep a secret from your parents, or invade their spaces and do predatory things because they've been taught to, be kind all the time. And so that's also another piece that I don't think people recognize. If you've got especially these men, these autogynephilic men, the men that dress as women because it's really a fetish for them, and there a lot of these men they choose situations to be around children, like drag queen story hour and such. They're really, maybe the individual certain, I'm not saying every individual is going to be predatory. However, that process, it numbs the kids out so that the predator can come in, and the kid's not going to say something's wrong because they've been trained to shut up and sit down and be kind.
Mm. Yeah. Crazy.
Hmm.
Is gender affirming care still something that's being practiced, or what's the
Oh
deal there?
yeah, for sure.
Mm.
It is. Although, I mean, there's this big battle. There's certainly this battle between the different ideological groups. President Trump put this executive order now to all the children's hospitals that they're not allowed to prescribe hormones and surgeries on minors. What was happening in Texas was after it was actually there was the state ban, but they were still prescribing the hormones, but just using kind of code fraud. So I think there are still situations where they're trying to just skirt around it. It's certainly happening for people over 18. So the minors now is a little more difficult. I think that the institutions are being a little more careful because they're having to face consequences, and of course money talks, and they don't want to face lawsuits or lose funding for. It's like there's I think they're going to lose all Medicare dollars if they continue to trans minors. However, 18 and up are mostly fair game still. And just because someone turns 18 doesn't magically make them have good judgment, especially if there's someone with mental illness or trauma or autism or have been groomed since they were young kids on the internet to think that this is their path to happiness.
Mm. Could you also explain for those maybe that are unfamiliar, what actually gender affirming care is?
Yeah, well, it's affirming someone's trans identity. So there's the social transition that people don't even recognize is still a problem just in of itself. So if their therapists will affirm someone, will say that they are of the opposite sex or not even of the opposite sex, sometimes it's non-binary or some, other mysterious gender identity. It doesn't have to be, or it could be some whatever. It just keeps changing what the trends are. But therapists are affirming these things without question. And in fact, certain states, they still have these what they call conversion therapy bans. So if they don't affirm it, that they actually get in trouble. So a lot of the good ones are staying out of it. So the ones that believe in it are still doing it. So that happens, and that messes them up psychologically just to start with, because they're living a lie. They're constantly fighting themselves, their reality. It usually becomes quite an obsession, and they become very like navel gazing because they're always thinking about themselves, like their bodies, their hair. It's it reinforces a lot of the negative self obsession like behaviors and thoughts that adolescents and young adults have, which is sort of normal, but it magnifies it, and so that they're just constantly worried about that. It stunts their growth, emotionally. So you've got all of that, and then maybe they're even living a lie in terms of lying to certain people about their identity in one setting, and then saying that they're trans in another setting or something like that, and that creates strife. So thinking about all the psychological problems. But then, of course, that leads you to the medicalization, and that means cross-sex hormones and surgeries. And really, what ends up happening is you become sort of like you're chasing the dragon's tail. You're always looking for the next thing to feel better, to feel more affirmed. And I mean, I compare it a lot to drug abuse. You're kind of chasing a high. And they even use the word euphoria. So it's not even me making that up. They use the word euphoria. That's a word you use when you're looking for seeking a high, and they don't usually get it. They get the first high, like when they're first getting affirmed or they start to see that some results, but it's never really there. Then, I've heard girls say, like they get the what they call the top surgery, which is a double mastectomy, and they'll get their breasts removed. Um, and they'll be like, "Oh, great, I look more male, I look more masculine," but then they look down and they see their bottom. They have female body parts for one, and they usually have hips, and they usually have smaller hands, and they usually have smaller feet, and they have softer skin. Or they just start obsessing about every part of their bodies, and it just becomes more and more of this obsession. And then, of course, you have physical harms. It creates a cascade of health issues. So we have cancers, we have blood clots, we have sexual dysfunction, we have it's like the vaginal floor gets thinned out, like all kinds of horrible things that like are really like barbaric to think about, happens, and it's all ignored, and it's not usually not warned. The patient's not warned. They get this very minimized version of what really happens to them, and that's a lot of what these lawsuits are saying, is that they were not given informed consent because they were not told. And in fact, they really could never get informed consent because the doctors themselves don't know what's going to happen, and nobody knows how to treat them if they're having in basically a chemically induced endocrine disorder, which is what they're getting. So they go through all of that, and it's lifelong. It's not like if they stop, it just gets better. I mean, usually it improves when over the years I've seen people who stop taking testosterone start to feel better over a couple of years, but they still have lifelong health issues, and they're usually struggling. And doctors who try to help them really don't know what to do, even those in good faith, because there's no studies around that. And then we move on to more surgeries, what they call the bottom surgery, which is so hard to describe. Like it's too like upsetting, honestly, to even describe, and gruesome. The men, you basically you're castrating a man, and you're creating an open wound. They have to dilate, is what they call it, where they have to stick something up their now like artificial hole, which is really like your body, a wound in your body. It's awful. Yeah, I know. It's like stuff you don't want to ever think about, and then people are acting like this is kind and nice, and this is the right thing to do, and this is the path we're sending people on. And then they never, they clearly can't have children if they've castrated themselves, or if they've covered up their genitals with grass skin, which can be like they can lose functioning of their hand as a result. Like it's really bad. Like it's and it's all experimental too. So they
Yeah.
basically sign their liabilities away when they go into this. And you've got to think, what kind of person does approve this for themselves? Somebody who is clearly disturbed, someone who is signing off on self-harm. It's basically medically assisted self-harm is what we're approving. That's what gender-affirming care is. Medically assisted self-harm.
Yeah, I was gonna say it basically sounds like torture,
Mhm.
and it
I mean,
seems
if
like
you're really disturbed, you kind of want that, right? If you hate yourself that much, that's who we're talking about. That's the population who goes for this.
yeah, it's the very end fringe extreme of like, potentially cutting your wrist or like cutting your thigh or something, which, people do when they self-harm. And now that's just like you kind of need more and more and more. And then you get to this sort of place where people keep telling you this is the right thing. This is the right thing. You
Yeah.
need this. You need this. You need this. You need, okay, fuck it. I'll do it. And then,
Yeah, this'll
uh,
make you feel better. Oh, no, no, you that's not enough. Now this'll make you feel better, and you just keep going. You're just on this treadmill.
yeah,
Yeah. So that's what gender affirming care is. And they call that conversion therapy. If you they call what they call conversion therapy is someone who just says, "Wait a second, you need to just accept your body for how you were born." That's called conversion therapy in several states, including California, where I've since fled.
yeah, yeah. It's crazy. Instead of, trying to actually see this person maybe in front of you and actually see them as a real human who's distressed and has issues, and that we can get to the root of these issues. We can actually help them solve these problems so they can become a flourishing part of society, and not sort of just
And not
sit
in
in
chronic
these
pain.
and not, yeah, exactly. I just so confusing why someone wouldn't do that instead, Uh, as a therapist or a mental health professional or someone who's sort of wanting to dedicate their life to helping people grow and flourish and see what they're truly capable of. We have also people kind of doing the opposite of that. And
Exactly.
it's
We're creating a cohort of disabled people.
Mhm.
And as someone who's been through a pretty horrible physical disability that was of no fault of my own or doctors, to know what that's like to really not be able to function in society because of physical limitations, to induce that on a young, healthy body to me is just it's so hard to understand that how my profession cheers the sun.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I watched that documentary you sent over, The Lost Boys.
Mhm.
And then so there's like some other sort of factors that play a part into why young boys or young men might get sort of put on this track. And um, yeah, maybe before I share my thoughts, like what do you think about, what'd you get from that documentary?
Yeah, that was a great documentary. Part of the reason why it was sort of revolutionary was because before that one was made, I don't know what year that came out, 2 years ago or so.
2 years ago.
The emphasis was on the girls. There has been a bigger cohort of girls that have been doing the trans thing. It was usually about 80-20. So the emphasis was on the girls and what they were doing and their self-harm behaviors and their, the social contagion aspect tends to affect girls more. However, there's a growing cohort of boys, and their needs and their motivations were being neglected. So that film came out, and people really appreciated it because it gave the boys perspective. So yeah, the overarching theme of that is about how boys, I think, they're often taught to hate their own masculinity, and especially the boys who struggle with, being a typical boy, they feel different, and they get lost, and they gravitate towards being trans as an answer to their struggles of turning into a man, because 'cause they're either afraid of it, they're afraid of their sexuality, they don't believe they can live up to the expectations of being a man. There's all sorts of things. A lot of them, do have had some kind of trauma, so that plays a factor. And so, a lot of times we don't think about the trauma that men and boys deal with, and we think about the girls having trauma, but it happens to men and boys too. So, yeah, that film had a lot of really articulate young men who were open and honest about very embarrassing topics like their bodies and sexuality to share with the world and help people understand how they fell into this transgender identity and how harmful it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it had
What
to
were your
do.
thoughts? I wanted to hear your thoughts. That's why I sent it to you because I felt like you would honestly have better insight as someone who, talks about this subject matter a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this before we started recording, but like I spend a lot of time around young men, but the most of the young men that I spent time around are athletes,
Mm.
very high level, trying to achieve a lot of great things. So I don't see a lot of this sort of other stuff. I only see it through, being online and talking to other people. And I know that it's people are experiencing it. I know there's a cohort of young men who are really, really struggling with this, their sense of who they are and their masculinity. Can they be a man? Can they want things? Do they have sexual desires? All those types of things, because I spend so much time with like these high level athletes. Not to say they don't deal with it, but it's less of it because
Well,
normally
they're more
the
confident.
Right.
usually from the
And
sports.
yes, and normally they're around other older men,
Mm,
coaches who are being good role models. And again,
yeah.
that's a really, really important thing for a young man. Not to say that I'm like the greatest coach ever and I'm the best role model that all these young men have, but I'm something, right? I'm something that
You
maybe
are
they,
something.
I'm something, and, whatever. And so, but then you have this other side where these young boys feel like they have no place. Um, and then, they're also told at the same time that the essence of them is toxic. That word.
Right.
So if the
The toxic
essence,
masculinity.
yes, yeah. So if the essence of me, I haven't done anything, I haven't done anything in this world, but the essence of me already is bad. And that's sort of a wrong foot to start off. What if I'm like a really good son and I do all the chores around my house? What if I'm a really good brother, younger brother, big brother? What if I am all of these things and I display those masculine traits there, but then I'm told that I should be, I should kind of step back a little bit because men of past have like raped and pillaged and that's all we do and that's all we're good for. And so the essence of me is very toxic. And so I should just become more like a woman, right? Men are just hairy, misbehaving women. That's what we are. And that's the messaging that we got. And that's a fucking ridiculous thing to tell anyone
Yeah.
because that's what we're going to try and be. We're just going to try to be more like better behaving women that have hair and a penis. But now the extreme of that is getting that all removed so I can just sort of assimilate into society and be the good little boy that everyone told me I should be instead of understanding sort of the wants, the needs, the desires, the passions of a young man and how we can display those in the best, most flourishing way that we can be of service to society.
Yeah.
I kind of take the idea of like what Dr. Jordan Peterson said of like, you want to become the most dangerous man you can possibly become. And he means dangerous in a competent and articulate way, not in like a violence, I'm going to kill you kind of way. It's just like
A protective way.
that's a provocative word for a young man to hear. Like, oh, I can become dangerous in a sense that I can articulate my words, I can be competent at my job, and that makes me dangerous, but I have it under voluntary
And
control.
powerful.
And powerful and strong and protect. And like then when you then when you go out into the world and whether you want to meet chicks and you want to have sex with girls and all these types of things start to happen, and then you experience things and you develop yourself, and then you want to get married and you want to be a father and things change and like all this stuff happens, but like it all starts developing when you're a young man and what messaging you hear, what you can become, the vision you have for yourself in the future. Oh, I can be like this coach that I have. I'm 12 now, but he's a little bit older than me. Maybe I could be like him, or maybe I could be like my dad. Like that's what we need. And so if you tell all young boys that they're fucking toxic and they haven't even done anything wrong, all they do is like play with crayons and color in the lines and like, no, that's bad. That's misogynistic. It's like, okay, fuck off then. I'm
Right.
gonna fuck off, and then I'm gonna do something that's maybe gonna get people's attention because I want people's attention. So I'm gonna tell people that I think I should be a woman, and then that's what we get to, and it's very sad. And then those young boys, or the not young boys, men, the young men in the documentary now share exactly those feelings that porn played a part into, their sense of
Yeah, I
belonging
was
played a
gonna
part
mention
into
the
it.
porn thing. I think
You know?
if you're not as engaged in life and you're on the internet and you're on porn more, and you're more likely to create to get that type of addiction, which feeds into this problem and feeds into, the negative sexual patterns that and self-image that these poor boys fall into.
Yeah. Yeah, and then
Mhm.
they turn 18, 19, 20, and maybe they didn't transition, they didn't go through all of that, they didn't go to the extreme of it, but now they're afraid to talk to women, they're afraid to approach women, they're afraid to go get a job, they don't wanna get their driver's license, they can get everything they want behind that screen. It's like, no, dude. Like, what I think is so important, young men will literally do anything once they have sex once and they realize how much better it is than fucking masturbating in your hand. They will literally start to get better, go out into the world and do shit. But they need that one thing. They need a girlfriend. They need prospects. They need a vision for the future, right? They need to see that they can do something in the world that people won't yell at them for. And that's really, really, really important. And we have to display that message for them, or else we're going to have a bunch of young men growing up that can't be leaders or protectors or providers or family men or fathers or anything like that that we need for a flourishing society. And we're just going to fucking crumble. Because I know women think they can do everything, but I think society would fall apart, right?
Mm-mm.
Immediately without men. And so if we want the kids that are now 18 to 25 years old to be those kind of men in a few years, which they can be, fucking they can be. I've met only great young men who want to be great in this world. They just need someone to say, I fucking believe in you, dude. I fucking believe in you. It's going to be hard. and people are going to tell you you're not shit, whatever, but I believe in you and you can build yourself up into something.
I
And
love
that's
that.
super important.
I mean, we need more. The men need, they need that confidence building, and they need it to come from other men. I think that's part of the problem too. Is women. I've noticed this, and I even was a little bit guilty of this when I was younger. Is like women think to help a man, you need to just help them express their feelings.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, don't do that.
Yeah, it's
That's
so
not what
funny.
they need. They need to use their strength. They need to get their, find their power. They need to find their confidence. They need to be challenged, and physically and intellectually, and in all different areas. And they need some adults to believe in them and not to coddle them.
Hmm.
So yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of that is missing in for a lot of these men. And in the past, there were always these situations where maybe they didn't have the proper role model, or you got the more, the kid that wasn't as masculine that struggled, and there was just a kid that was struggle and then worked through it, and maybe he was a little bit of a late bloomer, he got around. But now we have this whole industry that preys on those kinds of men, and then we've got the porn industry. We went through the entire lockdown period to lock these kids down onto screens and throw the porn in front of their faces, even if they didn't even want it. And now, they're addicted. So there's all these different, I'd say, things that are much more tempting, rather than doing the hard thing, like kind of what we were talking about earlier in our conversation. I think it all kind of wraps up into that, because a lot of times what the trans is, and people don't realize that, is it's kind of an easy way out, or it is for a short term. It kind of is. If you can't talk to girls, you can dress up like a girl, and then you're part of the girls for a minute. You're not really, though, because they're kind of lying, and you'll never be part of the girls. But it feels like it in the moment, and it does for a while, for short term, especially because girls have been trained to be nice to these trans boys, or
Hmm.
whatever, the boys who are pretending to be trans.
Yeah.
So it's these short-term solutions, and in the long term, we know it just turns into a disaster. But we, unfortunately, our culture is more and more doing this, like, short-term solutions. In fact, the Super Bowl was just yesterday. I don't know when you're going to air this, and there was a commercial about the Ozempic drugs, and they even made fun of, like, if you only could take a pill to solve this problem, if you could only take a pill to solve that problem. Did you watch it? I don't know if you saw
I
that
didn't see that
commercial.
commercial, no.
But I couldn't believe how direct they were being about the fact that we're all wanting to just take a pill to lose weight, which we all know the best way to lose weight is the hard way, which is diet and exercise and persistence and getting good sleep and making good choices. But we all want to just take a pill and make it better. And that really does sum up our culture in so many different ways. And hopefully, that will turn around. I think people will learn the hard way that they will not be able to take a pill, and things will not get better in the long run. And might feel good in the short run, but not in the long run.
Right. Yeah, that commercial sounds like the scam of body positivity is right out the fucking window.
Oh yeah, I actually just tweeted that today.
Nice.
I did. I was gonna write an op-ed on that specifically. I was like, just like that, magically, poof, the body positivity is gone. There were like I don't know, 3 or 4 commercials for, like, weight loss drugs last
Yeah.
night for the Super Bowl. It was insane.
Well,
Yeah.
now there's an easy way to do it. And so if there's an easy way to do it, everyone can have it. If
Mhm.
everyone can't have it, that means people shouldn't have it. That means it's bad. That means we should accept everyone. And I'm like, of course we should. Like, fat people are still a human being. Like, that thing is always so strange to me. Like,
Yeah, it's a false dichotomy, right?
like I see them as a real human, just made in the divine image of God, just like anyone else. That's why I want them to exercise, because I want
Yeah.
them to be fucking healthy and I want them to flourish. And it's not me seeing them like as like some subhuman person. I'm like, no, Sean, it's like actually the opposite. Like
Right.
I
You
actually
care about
deeply
their
value
well-being.
and respect them enough to say, dude, seriously, like
And
you
I mean,
gotta
it
do something.
it translates to the trans thing, because in a way, saying you're beautiful when you're really overweight is similar to affirming a gender identity. It's pretending something's okay and it's not. So that is a lot of what our culture does, is trains us to lie, to affirm, to pretend things are okay when they're not, to pretend things are one thing when they're really a different thing. I mean, if you think about it deeply, you could probably think of a lot of examples, probably within your own relationships, where people do this, where they just pretend something's okay. They keep kicking the can down the road, and then, more problems happen in the future.
Yes, certainly. But you did mention something about, women want more, like, emotional
Uh,
men, and
yeah.
anytime anytime I hear this from a woman, I'm like, "So, you go out on a date, super attractive dude, checks all the boxes, the date's going really well, and all of a sudden he starts fucking crying on the first date. Do you still wanna have sex with him?" They're like, "Well, like, no, you don't, you don't. You're not
No.
attracted to him anymore. Stop it." Now, if you're in a long-term committed marriage relationship, I feel very comfortable if something happens crying in front of my
If
wife.
you're connected and you have a connection,
Right.
but when you first meet them, no. They
But we've
need to.
already established a relationship. She knows who I am as a person, right? But like, there are certain things that you want to display. Everyone sort of, puts on their best foot forward when they're on dates, and like, so don't tell me you want like a more emotional man, and then he cries, he shows you emotion, and now you find him unattractive. So there's a time and place for everything. I think, of course, and I think men should be connected to some version of their ability to connect with their emotions. I call it being a warrior poet, because at some point you're going to have to be expressive about your love or the things you care about, and you're going to have your vows, or there's going to be a hard day you need to share something. But the more sort of important side would be the warrior side of developing that sort of dangerous, articulate, competent provider protector mentality, and then building enough rapport and relationship in that with your wife or whatever, that yeah, of course you can share your feelings and be open and honest and all that type of stuff. That's very, 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 very important, especially for men who feel like they're carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. You need something to sort of offload that. That's where your wife comes in. She's support, she's peace, she's things of that nature. But definitely not on a first fucking date.
Right. And I think what you're saying is a lot about just, like, basic, human, like, social skills and, what's attractive, what's not, and I think a lot of that is just being lost with all this political correctness, and kids are just lost from being online and, being guided by all these teachers and social emotional learning in schools and all their feeling charts up the wazoo, and they just don't even know how to communicate like normal kids and, just be normal. Like, they just don't know how, and it's really hard for them to connect. They don't understand that, like, and unfortunately, a lot of there is a higher rate of autism going on, and we could that's a whole other podcast, and I can't even, get into it. We can guess, but there are higher rates. I mean, I think there are more people pretending to be autistic, but then I think there really are people who are struggling with autism on a higher rate, and they don't have that ability to, be nuanced about when to express themselves and when not, and how to be around, especially when you're courting a woman, like how to be, cool and not be awkward. And so a lot of these kids fall into this trans identity because they don't understand these things. It's really hard. It's hard. You have to learn it from experience, and they don't get that experience.
Yep. Need reps talking to women. It's good stuff. It's fun.
Mhm.
Especially when you get
Anyway.
especially when you get the cookie at the end every once in a while.
Yeah.
Anyways, Pam, is there anything you want to mention, that I didn't ask you, or, before we jet off into the sunset here?
I don't know. I guess, can I plug my books
Of
for
course you
people?
can. You can plug whatever you
Okay.
want.
Is this video or just audio? Is both?
All the above.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I don't know if you've seen me or not. It's a good thing I had a good hair day. Anyway, I have a children's book. Actually, it's right here. I'm gonna reach for it. It's called Froggy Girl. So for those with little children and you wanna help them not get caught up into this whole trans craze, because once they're in it, it's really hard to pull them out of it, um, and kind of just, like, maybe help our society move in the direction of just normalcy and reality. I wrote this little book. It's called Froggy Girl, and it's about a little girl who wishes she was a frog. And everybody in the book, like, that loves her, they support her froggy identity, but she tries to do all the froggy things and it doesn't work out well because, she doesn't, like, have all the froggy abilities. And then she feels really sad and alone. And then she meets this wise turtle, and he teaches her that she's a beautiful little girl, and she learns to appreciate that. And the art is done by a detransitioner. So it's called Froggy Girl. The website is froggygirlbook.com. This is the last page where she learns. Um, the little girl learned to love the way God made her, beautiful and smart and full of fervor. It
Beautiful.
rhymes. And then I do have, for those that know somebody that's caught up in the trans craze already, teens or young adults. I have this other book called A Practical Response to Gender Distress, Tips and Tools for Families. It is on Amazon. You can just Google my name or my website, thetruthfultherapist.org. It has a link. And this really is, it just breaks down all the rules. It gives you some background. It helps you kind of argue some of the main points that the trans activists continue to lie about. Like, if you don't affirm, the person will kill themselves. I break that down, why that's a lie. I break down why there are only two genders and why involving intersex is irrelevant. I go into all that. It has detransitional art in it. It has questions to start an open-ended conversation with somebody who's kind of stuck in this cult-like mentality. It has a trans English dictionary in the back, and it has a lot of resources in the back. So this is just a really good resource, and it's really easy to read for people who are just trying to make and figure out what's up and what's down, and talk to somebody who's in the middle of this and might not know where to start. It's a good starter pack for you. So those are my two books on that topic.
Sweet. They'll be linked in the description below for anyone that wants to check those out.
Awesome.
Thanks, Pam. Appreciate
You're
you very
welcome.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click right here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But most importantly, above all else, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.